What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I was going to show you how I care for my key lime tree. Now, the scientific name is Citrus aurantifolia swingle. This is a hybrid. This is the key lime tree. You've probably heard it called the key lime tree, the West Indian lime tree, the Mexican lime, and even the bartender's lime. Now, typically whenever you go to the stores, you can get the Persian lime or you can get the key lime. And there is a difference between the two. The key lime does have kind of a smaller fruit, thin skin, and is typically so kind of darker green, but when it fully ripens it turns kind of yellow. This tree does have thorns on it, pretty large, pretty stiff, pretty sharp thorns on the stems and branches, and close to around the leaves as well. So you have to be very careful because you can poke yourself and cause some harm, especially when dealing with it or moving or pruning. And if you have one indoors, I probably wouldn't sit it in a high traffic area where somebody could graze by it and cut themselves, because I've done that once or twice and it's pretty sharp. Now, the Persian lime does not have thorns on its tree at all, and therefore it does have thicker skin to try and protect the juices, and it has more acidity to it, so it's a little bit more tart, if you will. The Persian lime is better for like canning juices and making pretty good juices, you know, like limeade. And then this one is really good at, it's got a sweet juice, not as tart as the Persian lime, so it's actually better for drinks like a bartender would make, any kind of cocktail. It's got thinner skin, so it's easier to put in like the beer bottles for Coronas and Modelos, and it's really good at baking desserts, maybe a pie, key lime pie, but that is the key lime tree that we're talking about here. It is actually from tropical Southeast Asia, so you really kind of want to talk about the tropics and think about the tropics whenever you're growing this tree. And ideally in the United States, it's best at home in zones 9 through 11. If you're like me, I'm in 6A, so I have to keep it in a pot, and as soon as the temperature is over 50 degrees, I can bring him outside and he's fine, right as rain. As you can actually tell, he's been outside and got a little shower. But if you know it's going to be colder than 50 degrees at all, you should go ahead and bring him in. These guys are not cold hardy at all. They don't like cold weather. And if you leave them out in the cold too long, below 50 degrees, their leaves can start changing color. And you could stunt it pretty bad, and it won't produce flowers, and it probably won't produce fruit either. They are very kind of sensitive trees when it comes to coolness. So think tropics, a lot of light, a lot of humidity, a lot of warmth. And then they're pretty much at home. Now, is it worth having your own lime tree? Well, that's kind of what I want to explore in this video, to see if you think that it's worth for you to have your own lime tree. And I, spoiler, think it is. Like I said, I like this one. Key limes are typically more disease resistant and pest resistant than other kind of citrus trees out there, especially other lime trees. In dealing with limes contain a lot of vitamin C. A lot of vitamin C is very beneficial to your immunity, your immune levels, and wound healing as well. Some studies actually suggest that a lot of vitamin C can actually help with white blood cell production and can also help reduce inflammation. Key limes also contain antioxidants, and antioxidants are kind of compounds that can help fight free radicals. Free radicals are kind of like molecules that can attack and hurt and damage your cells, and then potentially leading to severe diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and the big C word, cancer. So they are beneficial to help reducing your chances of those diseases and help with the antioxidants, with the free radicals. Limes also help reduce heart disease by reducing your blood pressure. And it can also help in reducing your chances of atherosclerosis. I don't know if you know, but atherosclerosis is actually the disease that enables a lot of plaque to build up in your artery walls. And the vitamin C in there can actually help reduce some of that arterial buildup in the walls. Now also, vitamin C is very beneficial to your skin and your skin's health. Vitamin C can actually help in producing collagen, which can actually make your skin stronger, more elastic, and then it can also help reduce wrinkles on you too. And then also, limes also help in iron absorption as well. Your body needs a lot of iron to produce red blood cells and to transport oxygen throughout your body. And as another little side note, the citric acid in limes can also help reduce kidney stones too. So if you're one that drinks a lot of soda pop, had a lot of sugar in your diet, the citric acid in the limes can also help reduce all that buildup as a kidney stone in your kidneys as well. You do have to be careful though, because the citric acid in limes can also be a kind of a double-edged sword. If you eat too much or drink a lot of lime juice, ultimately that can end up damaging a lot of your tooth enamel as well. If you feel like you are eating too much or drinking too much lime juice, just try to rinse your mouth out thoroughly with a good amount of water after ingesting a lot of lime juice or just eating limes in general. And not only that are they beneficial to your health, but they also help clean the air in your environment and give some food as well. Now I think they are very beautiful looking trees. They have rather kind of smaller, ovate, serrated edges, ovate shaped leaves, and they have that dark kind of lime green look on them. And like I said, they do have thorns on there, so they are pretty sharp and pretty pointy, so you can actually hurt yourself. But the flowers on here are gorgeous. I don't know if you can see it, but mine is actually starting to flower. And the first day of spring was on the 21st this year, and today is like the 23rd or the 24th, and his flowers are actually starting to open up. Now they are really kind of small, diminutive flowers, but they do pack a punch. They are very aromatic, and interestingly enough, not every key lime tree's flowers will actually have a smell to them. Some have a really high aromatic, almost kind of overwhelming scent, and some kind of have a medium, and some almost don't produce any kind of smell at all. Fortunately, mine is almost in between medium to high, and I have to get a little close to be able to smell them, especially if there's only one or two open to where I could see them. But when they first all came open, I could really smell them all at once, and they actually kind of filled the room they were in, and it smelled pretty nice. Now I kind of liken the smell to kind of like jasmine, more kind of a citrusy kind of jasmine, or a mix between kind of like jasmine and honeysuckle, if you've ever smelled kind of honeysuckle. But the flowers are kind of a white or a cream color, and then they have the yellow on the inside from all that pollen, and they are what's called perfect flowers. Now that just means they have both male and female parts, and they're able to self-fruit or self-pollinate, and they don't need to have another plant in order to produce fruit. So they will actually produce fruit on their own, and the flowers actually start out with kind of a purplish tint to them, and then as they kind of open up, it'll kind of dissipate, and it'll be that kind of really pristine white color, and you'll see that little yellow in the middle. But they're very kind of beautiful looking flowers, and they almost kind of remind you of like a sunny day with the center being kind of sun and the clouds around it, and then all that green just looks spectacular against the cream colored flowers and the yellow. It just kind of fits in nicely, and it's a really beautiful tree when they actually do flower, especially when they get a lot larger. Now, like I said, they're able to self-pollinate and self-fruit, and key limes will usually start producing fruit around 3 to 6 years of age. Well, they'll actually reach their mature maximum fruit production at around 8 to 10 years. Now, a fully healthy, mature key lime tree can actually produce anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds of fruit in a year. So they're kind of in the medium range as far as fruit production. They're not considered a low fruit producing tree, but they're not exactly a high fruit producing tree either. Kind of in the middle, more towards the high end, but they can actually get a decent amount of fruit on them. Now, I said that they are from tropical Asia, so the people over there would suggest that the more fruit your tree produces, the luckier it is. So lime trees are kind of considered lucky trees, and that's kind of tied in with as much fruit as they produce. Now, I guess that would be any kind of tree. If they produced a lot of apples, oranges, or whatever, they would pretty much be a lucky tree. But it's no different with lime trees as well. Now, in talking about care of your lime tree, you really have to kind of keep that in mind as to where they come from. So I said the southeast tropics of Asia, they need a decent amount of light. You have to be careful where you put yours because you want it to have at least 10 hours of direct sunlight a day. Now, you also have to be very careful where you plant them because you don't want to overcrowd them. If you have them kind of clustered in together and then they're getting a lot of shade from either other trees or larger trees or buildings, they won't produce as much fruit. They really do need all that sunlight to produce all that fruit that you want from this tree. So make sure you've got them in a bright location that receives ample amount of sunlight, and they're not going to be shaded out from another larger tree or another lime tree or another building or anything of that nature. Water is very important for your tree too. They like a decent amount of water and they're kind of thirsty. When it comes to any other citrus tree, it's kind of average. They like a decent amount of water, but they also like to dry out some in between waterings. As long as their feet are able to stay kind of saturated but mostly dry, they're okay. They need a substrate that's going to hold on to a little bit of water but mainly let all that through it. So you don't want a whole bunch of water in there. You want it to actually drain freely and stay a little bit moist, kind of like the consistency of a wrung out sponge, because if they get too much water they will actually drown. And it's really funny too because they're actually named the key lime tree from being grown in the Florida Keys, and that was one of the last places that this tree actually got into cultivation, was in the Florida Keys. And they do relatively well down there in the Keys, in the extreme southern parts of like Miami and southern Florida. But strangely, they cannot tolerate floods at all, and they're really not good with salt, either in the water from all that salt water of the ocean or in the salt spray in the air either. That kind of messes them up and can kind of damage them. But strangely, they were found in the Florida Keys, and ideally, Florida and the Florida Keys don't really produce a whole much of the key lime anymore. Majority of it comes from Haiti or Mexico or India, but really there isn't much coming from the name where they come from the Florida Keys. So make sure that if you do have yours outside and you plant yours, yours isn't in any danger of getting a lot of salt spray or in danger of any kind of flooding either. Now in the wintertime, you'll want to cut the light back some. Summertime's at least 10 hours of direct sunlight, and I have him under my LEDs for about 6 hours during the wintertime, and he's been fine with that. They are considered a tropical evergreen, so he won't be dropping leaves. They may drop occasionally some, just based on the lower light that they receive, but they shouldn't drop all their leaves. They are an evergreen, and they should always have leaves on them. Now, watering in the winter, slower months is to be cut back by half, as it be expected. So make sure that you're not overwatering it once the dormant season hits. Like I said, you want to keep drainage holes in the bottom of the pot too, because you want all that excess water to freely drain out. So if you keep a saucer underneath it, after about 20 minutes I'd empty that saucer out, and then your tree should be fine. Like I said, temperatures with this guy, as long as it's over 50 degrees Fahrenheit, you can keep them outside. But if it's supposed to get down below 50, even 49, I would probably bring them back in because they don't respond well to cold at all. It's not uncommon to water these guys about once or twice a day, depending on how hot it gets outside. And remember, as the heat index goes up, the watering needs to go up too. They are kind of thirsty drinkers, but you don't want to drown them, so just make sure that if there is daily watering from Mother Nature, or it's been watering the past couple of days or raining, that you don't go ahead and add more water to it. If it's been a short dry spell though, you may want to go ahead and step in and give them a little bit of water. They benefit more from a deep, thorough watering and kind of infrequent watering schedules. So you don't want to water a whole lot, but you want to make sure it's a really deep, thorough water, ensuring that all the roots in the whole pot actually get watered and touch water and then drain out. Soil is very particular for these trees. Now, it's said that they can pretty much deal with any kind of soil out there, but in a pot you'll want to get a soil that's based more for citrus trees, and I use the Miracle-Gro cacti and citrus soil out there, and those feed for about 6 months. So if you have that, you really don't need to fertilize after about before the 6-month mark. After that though, they are really heavy feeders, so I would kind of step in, and I use a little bit of that Charlie's compost, which is fertilized with chicken manure and some other stuff. But as long as they have a good deal of nitrogen and phosphorus to help produce blooms, they're good. And they also need a decent amount of their micronutrients like zinc, copper, boron, and magnesium. So as long as all those are in there and they're being met, your lime tree will be happy. But you do have to get specific fertilizers for your lime trees. Now, I did say that they are kind of heavy feeders, but with my compost, a little bit goes a long way. So typically, I will go ahead and feed him in the early spring. I did that on the first day of spring, and I just take my compost and I'll kind of rake in, put some on top, and then use a little kind of root rake or anything to kind of mix it all in, and then add a little bit of soil on top, not much. You can really just kind of set the compost on there and then take a little rake and rake it down in there, and then I cover up just a little bit with some additional soil to make sure that none of the roots are exposed. Summertime's just around the corner, and if you're leaving a lot of that root exposed, it'll dry out quickly and probably die back. So make sure you keep all those roots covered up and they're not actually exposed to the elements. Now you have to be careful though with any kind of fertilizer. You don't want to get it on the tree branch or the stem or any of the leaves. A lot of that fertilizer can cause burn and kill a lot of the leaves and really mess your trunk up too. And you also don't want to apply any of that compost or fertilizer directly to the roots. Like I said, you can mix in some of it, but I'll leave about a good inch and a half away from the branch or the stem, so I'm not really sitting on top of direct roots either, but I am kind of sprinkling that around and mixing it in lightly. Then after the first feed of spring, I will go ahead and fertilize him again towards late summer, right before fall gets here, and then once winter sets in, I might give him a little bit of some liquid fertilizer to help him a little bit throughout the slower season. Like I said, they don't really go dormant. They do reduce a little bit and go back, but you can give them a light fertilizer just to help them get through a little bit of that tough time through winter time. But as long as you've repotted recently, you don't really have to worry about that. Like I said, you're usually good for about 6 months. Now, these trees can live anywhere from about 50 to 100 years, but it's not uncommon to have a key lime tree live well over 100 years if you're really kind of taking care of it, fertilizing it, giving it its nutrients, and then kind of pruning and making sure you're managing any kind of pest and disease on there as well. And in talking about soil, I also want to cover the pH with this guy. Citrus trees like a decent kind of somewhat acidic soil. I keep mine at about 6.2, 6.3, but anywhere between 6.1 on up to about 7.6 is ideal for your lime tree. But typically they like it more towards the acidic side, slightly acidic, not super acidic. Alright guys, well that really concludes this video and all I really want to talk about with this key lime tree. Be sure to leave me a comment, let me know if you've ever had any kind of success or failures with your key lime tree and maybe how much it's produced. As always, I want to give a special shout out to my top tier tree patrons like Dan. Thank you. I'd like to give another shout out to David and Heather as well. If you are interested in supporting my channel through Patreon, check the link in the description box below. As always, your support goes to keeping the lights on, all the water and fertilizer coming in, new pots for new homes for these new trees, and anything else that you want to see a video on. Alright guys, that concludes this video, and it's been Justin reminding you that if you can, go out and plant a tree. Let's reforest the world. Until next time guys, take it easy, have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you YouTube.